Lesson 12. The Seal of God and Mark of the Beast, Part 2.
Memory text: He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity, he who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Revelation 13:10.
Throughout history, God has had many people who want to remain faithful. Adventists like to mention the Waldenses, a group of people who from the 15th century on, fell victim to the Catholic Church. They disagreed with them on many things, and were considered heretics. The Waldenses adhered to several Catholic teachings, such as the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, or communion. They disagreed with others, and wanted to adhere to the scriptures as they were led, not by a human.
Several attempts were made to virtually wipe them out with violence and murder. The Waldenses themselves carried out counterattacks on Catholics later. Several attempts were made at peace, and the Waldenses lived on. There are Waldenses still today, although most have assimilated with other churches such as Methodists and Presbyterians. Staying true to your beliefs, even under immense pressure, violence, and persecution will be required in the last days. What happened to the Waldenses was extreme persecution. Even that will pale to what is coming.
The deadly wound. The evil powers in Revelation 13 and 14 will form a worldwide institution of false religion mixed with political power. Knowledge of history is very important when looking at different takes on who these powers might be. In 1844, Millerites decided that Jesus was coming now. This caused them to look at events in Revelation and current events that might match up. We study more, and remember that many worldwide events have happened since 1844, up until even now. Early Adventists pioneers would undoubtedly be surprised that Jesus has not come before 2023. Revelation 13:5. And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. A day for a year principle in prophecy here would mean 1260 years. We point to 1798 when Pope Pius VI was jailed by Napoleon, and count back 1260 years, as we found that as a deadly wound. Nothing of note actually happened 1260 years earlier in AD 538. Looking at the history of the Catholic Church, the first major event that damaged it was the Great Schism of 1054. The Church broke in two, with the Eastern Orthodox Church taking control of Christianity in Eastern Europe. The two churches have never reunited. 300 million people are still part of this church. 7 popes were murdered before the Great Schism. 3 others died suspicious deaths. After that, 3 others died due to suspected foul play. The Holy Roman Empire was constantly at war and conflict, and was actually quite small. King Henry VIII in 1534 declared himself to be head of the Church in England. The Catholic Church was then decimated in the United Kingdom. Citizens were now forced to worship in the Church of England. It might be good to know that in the 1920s, Great Britain became the largest empire in the history of the world, as far as worldwide territory. The sun literally never set on Britannia. In the early to middle 1900s, numerous revolutions occurred in Central and South America. In Mexico, the Catholic Church was devastated. Numerous church members and officials were murdered. Laws were passed against Catholics that only until recently were still on the books. Fidel Castro in Cuba saw the church as an enemy. Churches and schools were taken over by the government. Priests and church leaders were oppressed and persecuted. After 40 years, friendlier terms began. The worldwide Catholic Church is still feeling effects of their sexual abuse scandal. We must know and learn history to be able to talk about the beast powers in Revelation more effectively. We cannot, and should not, recite any ideas without having full knowledge of the history surrounding them. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is now 160 years old. As time goes by, more study and preparation is obviously needed for us to effectively proclaim the three angels' messages. The falling away. 2 Thessalonians 2:9-12. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth but had pleasure in unrighteousness. The laws of God will be changed and sin will abound, up to and including the end of time. It has been happening for centuries. Numerous false religions and gods have taken over most of the world. Bible-believing Christians are a very small minority now, and that number will shrink even further. These events were both predicted in Daniel and Revelation. These systems have negated the ministry of Jesus, and are full of truth that are really lies. Christians will be accused of various crimes because they do not follow worldly practices, but preach against them. Jesus showed us how to act and confront these false religions and accusations. He loved his accusers and forgave them. Jesus knew they were only following the crowd, clueless to right and wrong. Never did he fight back, protest, or resist. The faith of Jesus in his Father got him through the worst times a human will ever endure. Neither did Jesus run and hide. Isaiah 53:7. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth.
Satan's final strategy. Revelation 17:12-13. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. The political powers at the end will be of one mind. They will unite to oppose and attack the true followers of Jesus. As the world has moved forward in the past 150 years, any talk of this final alliance must equate with how the world is moving. The rise of Islam was never a thought. Ellen White herself made one statement about it. Mohammedism has its converts in many lands, and its advocates deny the divinity of Christ. Shall this faith be propagated? And the advocates of truth fail to manifest intense zeal to overthrow the error? And teach men of the pre-existence of the only Savior of the world? Islam is a major player in the world today, both political and religious. The world still runs on oil. Anti-Christian governments are a large part of this. India has a history of mixing religion and politics, and has 1 billion Hindu followers. We know prophecy says all of the world's religions unite, but we do not know the details of how and when that will happen. Our job is to preach the everlasting gospel, and stay true to Jesus. The mark of the beast. Revelation 14:9. Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand. Adventists have always seen this as something other than a literal mark. The forehead could signify how you think, the hand how you act. Interesting that it does not say on both. This implies that if you worship the beast in your heart, but do not show any outward sign of that, your heart is not hidden from God. Likewise, if you go through the act of worship, without believing it, your very actions will condemn you. Beware of anyone that tells you that you can survive by your own efforts. There is no middle ground or compromise. Revelation 14:12. Here is the patience of the saints, here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Commandments here are plural. Worshipping on Saturday will do nothing without the faith of Jesus. It is a complete package of God's laws, precepts, and understanding. In fact, the very first commandment actually says it all. Exodus 23. You shall have no other gods before me. You will be asked to go against that long before any day of worship comes into play. Who or what are you worshipping now? Exodus 24. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Daniel's friends were asked to go against those and bow to the golden statue. Later, a law was passed forbidding prayer to the living God. Will you be willing to bow down? Don't concentrate on one idea thinking the others will not matter. In today's world, children are encouraged to disrespect their parents. Lying, cheating, and stealing is allowed to go on unchecked. What did we expect when we defund the police? Allow criminals to go free? False worship is just that. False worship. Anything and everything that goes against God's teachings is false worship. People who go to church on Sunday rarely are Sunday keepers. It's just another day. Catholics have Mass every day of the week. Many large evangelical churches have services on several days to accommodate the crowds, not just on Sunday. When we put everything into perspective, we see a complete package of false worship, not a one-item false worship. One physical act will not equal deliverance. Stand firm in all biblical commandments, teachings, precepts, and worshiping. Matthew 7:22-3. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. The Sabbath test. When any test of salvation and loyalty to Jesus is discussed, it must be put into perspective of the Bible. John 13:35. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. We will quote the General Conference recorded on April 15, 1997. To blame past violations of Christian principles on one specific denomination is not an accurate representation of either history or the concerns of Bible prophecy. We recognize that at times Protestants, including Seventh-day Adventists, have manifested prejudice and even bigotry. If, in expounding on what the Bible teaches, Seventh-day Adventists fail to express love to those addressed, we do not exhibit authentic Christianity. Adventists seek to be fair in dealing with others. Thus, while we remain aware of the historical record and continue to hold our views regarding end-time events, we recognize some positive changes in recent Catholicism, and stress the conviction that many Roman Catholics are brothers and sisters in Christ. The Sabbath commandment calls us to work 6 days. The Western world looks at Saturday and Sunday as a weekend, a time of rest. There is even a movement to make Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as a 3-day weekend. Breaking the Sabbath is a whole other issue. Sabbath-keeping Christians will be asked to not only defile the Sabbath, but engage entirely in false worship. God's faithful people must follow the Bible and their convictions in everything. Following the beast is not based on one human act, but will include anything and everything that is false worship. If we look at the world, and the laws being passed or suggested, they are slanted against Christian values, not just one. The sealing of God is a daily thing. How is your walk? Before worrying about what may or may not come during the time of trouble, our daily relationship with Jesus is most important. Do not make the Sabbath your idol. The act of being in church on Saturday will not save you. We must take into account that the vast majority of the world does not worship on any day, and ignores anything related to God. Billions of people hold Friday as a special day of prayer. We must also acknowledge that the world is a completely different place than it was 150 years ago. A constant relationship with Jesus is required now and in the true last days. Are you practicing complete faith, or just parts?